7 minutes, 44 seconds, 881 milliseconds. That is one of the fastest Nurburgring laps ever recorded by a front-wheel drive production car, set by the Honda Civic Type R. Front-wheel drive, 4 cylinders, 2 liters. Now, if you told a Lamborghini owner that 20 years ago, they would have laughed at you, loudly. Meet the Toyota GR Yaris Rally 1, a 1.6-liter engine, roughly 500 horsepower, a monster on low-grip terrain. The Hyundai i20N Rally 1 did the same thing, same stages and conditions. And the Hyundai Elantra NTCR helped Hyundai secure 6 consecutive IMSA TCR Manufacturers Championships. Not because it got lucky, because it refused to break. So, 3 cars, 1 attacks the Nurburgring, 1 flies through forests at 500 horsepower, 1 wins championships for a living, all with 1 engine layout. None of this should be possible. So what happened? And, more importantly, why did nobody tell you it was going to be this good? For most of automotive history, the rule was simple. More cylinders, more power. A bigger engine has bigger cylinders. Bigger cylinders burn more fuel, and more fuel means more power. Want more? Just add more cylinders and make a V6, V8, V10, V12. The formula worked for 100 years, so nobody seriously questioned it. And then engineers noticed something that changed everything. The formula was never about displacement. It was about air. And if it was about air all along, what happens when you stop waiting for a bigger engine to breathe more of it? On every intake stroke, the piston pulls air into the cylinder. Fuel gets injected, mixture ignites, piston gets pushed down. That's your power stroke. That's all displacement ever was. It's a way to move more air. But what if you could force more air into a small cylinder? That's a turbocharger. Genuinely one of the cleverest things ever bolted to an engine. Because it steals energy from exhaust gases that would otherwise disappear out the tailpipe. The hot exhaust gases spin a turbine. That turbine drives a compressor on the other side of the same shaft. The compressor forces pressurized air into the intake. Compressed air is denser. More oxygen, more fuel, more power. A 2.0-liter engine breathing pressurized air can move the same amount of air as a naturally aspirated engine twice its size. That sounds like it shouldn't work. It absolutely does. This is why the Honda Civic Type R feels so strong the moment boost builds. It's behaving like something much bigger than it is. This is why the Hyundai Elantra N delivers its torque right in the middle of the rev range, where you actually drive every day. This is why the Toyota GR Yaris Rally 1 sounds like it's detonating. At full boost, a 1.6-liter engine is moving air at a rate its physical size would suggest is impossible, and boost pressure is where modern engineers have gone to genuinely unreasonable extremes. The AMG M139, a 2.0-liter 4-cylinder used in the Mercedes AMG SL 43 and, somewhat improbably, in the middle of the Lotus Emira i4, produces 420 horsepower in AMG spec, 210 horsepower per liter, an absurd number for a production engine. It runs 30 psi of boost. Most performance turbos run 18 to 22 psi. A decade ago, 30 psi would have been considered extreme for a track day car, let alone something you park outside a restaurant. The old formula, bigger engine, more power. The new formula, same engine, more air. Simple, elegant, spectacularly effective. But if it's that straightforward, why didn't everyone do it decades earlier? The turbo was not initially a cheat code. It came with 3 serious problems. Lag. A turbocharger needs exhaust gas to spool up. At low RPM, there isn't enough. So the engine feels lazy, then boost arrives all at once. Exciting the first time, exhausting by the 10th. Heat. Forced induction means higher combustion temperatures. Under sustained boost, exhaust valve heads can exceed 700 degrees Celsius. In an unmanaged system, heat destroys engines. Durability. A turbo engine running high boost is working far harder than a naturally aspirated engine of the same size. Sustaining that over race distances required solutions that simply didn't exist in early turbo development. These weren't small problems. They kept turbo engines in motorsport and niche applications for decades. Then engineers started solving them, and this is the part nobody tells you. Honda's answer to lag was the K20C1. The turbocharged four-cylinder at the heart of the FL5 Civic Type R. In engines like the F20C and the Honda S2K, VTEC lived on the intake camshaft, giving the engine a conservative personality below a threshold and an aggressive one above it. That surge at 5,500 revolutions per minute. That was VTEC on the intake side. In the K20C1, Honda moved it to the exhaust side entirely. That's the move most people miss. The turbocharger runs on exhaust gas. The more concentrated that pulse, the faster the turbine spins, the sooner boost builds. Think of weak exhaust flow as trying to spin a turbine with a garden hose. Honda's exhaust side VTEC switches it to a pressure washer. Same gas, focused, directed. Boost arrives earlier, the power band widens, turbo lag gets strangled in its sleep. But lag was only one of the three problems. Honda's answer to heat? Liquid metal. The exhaust valve stems in the K20C1 are hollow and packed with sodium. Sodium melts at 97 degrees Celsius, well below operating temperature. Under load, it turns liquid, sloshes inside the valve stem and conducts heat away from the valve head into the guide, where the cooling system handles it. Liquid metal, cycling inside a family hatchback, so the grocery run doesn't destroy the engine. Honda engineers thought this was completely reasonable. They were right. AMG's answer in the M139, roller bearing technology derived from Mercedes Formula One program. Traditional turbo bearings use an oil film, effective but with friction and a slight delay. Roller bearings use direct physical contact with lower friction, faster spool, boost arriving sooner. 30 psi, a Mercedes-AMG, a mid-engine Lotus Emira, running bearing technology from the pinnacle of motorsport. That is engineers responding to a problem with what can only be described as excessive enthusiasm. And it worked. Theory is one thing, here's what actually happened. The Honda Civic Type R front-wheel drive, 2.0 liters, a Nurburgring lap that would have sounded like a misprint 10 years ago. That time didn't come from luck. It came from an engine that solved the problems. The Toyota GR Yaris Rally 1 ran roughly 500 horsepower from 1.6 liters, not as a peak number, but sustained across multi-day events, on gravel, in snow, in conditions designed to expose every shortcut an engineer ever took. No shortcuts survived. The Hyundai Elantra N TCR Edition, 6 consecutive IMSA TCR Manufacturers' Championships for Hyundai, not one season. 6. Against competition that had every reason to close the gap and didn't. That is the durability problem, solved, written in championship results, in front of a timing system that doesn't care about press releases. Here's the last piece. Once engineers solved the problems, exhaust side valve timing, liquid metal cooling, motorsport-derived bearings, the turbocharged four-cylinder didn't just compete with larger engines, it started winning arguments that had nothing to do with performance. It was smaller, lighter, more efficient at cruise, lower emissions. For manufacturers building hundreds of thousands of cars, that matters enormously. But here is what actually ended the V8 in the hot hatch. The Turbo 4 didn't win because regulators pushed it. Engineers had been using turbochargers under racing rules for decades before road cars caught up. It won because, once the problems were solved, it could genuinely do the same job better. Not cheaper, better. The old formula, more cylinders, more displacement, more power. The new formula was simpler and more dangerous. Get enough compressed air into a small combustion chamber, manage the heat with liquid metal, solve the lag with valve timing borrowed from naturally aspirated engineering, add bearing technology from Formula One, and the number of cylinders stops mattering. The Turbo 4 didn't win by being cheaper. It didn't win because someone forced it to. It won because engineers figured out how to make a small engine behave like a big one. And then, just to make the point clearly, they dropped one into the middle of a Lotus Emira. So, did turbocharged 4 cylinders actually win? Or did we just get really good at accepting the compromise? Tell me what car changed your mind, or tell me why you're still not convinced, and we'll see you in the next one.